You're welcome.
It doesn't. They can steal some of
Okay.
Okay, so with that being said, we're going to adjourn the Building and Standards Commission. The time is 6:13. And we will reconvene the Edmond City Council meeting. Let's see, we have no consent agenda items, citizens' comments. You just had the one?
At this time, any person who desires to speak on any item posted on the agenda or any person with business before the city council not scheduled on the agenda may speak to the city council, provided that a speaker's request form has been completed and provided to the city secretary prior to the start of the meeting. Speakers are limited to a maximum of 3 minutes unless otherwise granted by the mayor. The city council cannot respond to matters not listed on the agenda until scheduled at a future meeting. Please direct all comments to the council. Proper respect, decorum, and conduct shall prevail at all times. Impertinent, slanderous, or personal attacks are strictly prohibited. Unauthorized remarks from the audience, stomping of feet, applauding, whistles, yells, or any type of disruptive behavior are prohibited and violators may be removed. Donna Sullivan.
Is it on?
Yes.
Okay.
I have a list. I've lived at the apartments for a year. My lease is up now. I refuse to sign a new one. But I have 2 pages, 2.5 pages of everything that has not been repaired and things that they've done since the first hearing. One of them is for 8 months, I had a light blinking outside my apartment in the parking lot where you couldn't see anything other than this little light up here. I requested it be replaced because I leave my home at 5:30 in the morning to go to work. I don't trust a lot of people in a place, where you're not familiar. They finally fixed it after the first meeting. I've got a water leak under my kitchen sink that's been there for a year. My toilet's back up repeatedly. They have to come out and do whatever it is they do with the hose, but they do it outside at the main line. Well, that had to happen this weekend. And when they were pumping it out, water bugs this big came out of that hole. And they're still laying on the property where they hosed it up. They were still there when I left to go to work this morning. We never got our mailbox keys. It took us 4 months to get our keys to the mailbox. So my checks and stuff that are supposed to be direct deposit were coming to the apartments because they didn't have it set up right. I couldn't get my checks out of the mail. I didn't get my divorce papers in the mail. They sent it to me, but I didn't get them. When we first moved in, they had redone the kitchen counters. And it's supposed to be a marble type stuff. But when the guys put it in, they set their drill down on the counter and this is my counter. And right here, there's a big place cut out. And we told the manager at the time, this has to be fixed. And there's one on the other side too. We'll get somebody out here to take care of that. They're supposed to repair it. That's been over a year ago. I have a broken window in my bedroom. And my bedroom faces the outside on the parking lot. And people look through my window all the time. I can't keep my blinds open because I don't like anybody looking in my house like that. They don't keep up the property. They, let me see. The floor was, did I already say that? The floor was done. And when we got over there to check everything out, they were still trying to get it ready, but they told me it was ready 2 days prior to that. But they put new flooring in. And I sat down on the couch after we got it moved in, and I said, look at this floor. It's split. They're supposed to be together. It was split. This piece was bubbling up. And you know what he told me? Get some wood glue and put it back down. That ain't my job. I pay $1,000 a month for that apartment. And when we have to live where there's water bugs everywhere, all over the place, I don't care how, and I'm OCD. I'm a clean freak. You can't tell it right now because I got boxes everywhere because we're trying to get moved. They repeatedly told me that I need to sign a new lease. First, they sent me a form and tell me I had to eviction notice because my lease was up on March 8th. I signed my original lease on March. I signed it the 19th. My roommate signed it on the 22nd of March last year. And they're trying to evict me on the 8th. She said, well, that's what it says on your contract. I said, no, I did not sign that. You don't have my name anywhere on there except for where y'all typed it in. Because I know my signature. And I don't do it electronic when I'm signing a contract like that. I've been around too long. I've been in the courts too long. I'm tired of fighting with them. They're not getting anything done. I have a light in my living room. It took me 6 months for them to come over and change my ceiling fan because there's a loose wire in it. Whether they fix the wire or not up in the ceiling, I don't know. The lights are not blinking right now. But the one in my kitchen, it blinks all the time. One light bulb. And you know what that does to a 3-year-old little boy when he gets up in the morning and the lights are flickering in the house? He's beside himself. And the water not shut off in either one of the tubs. I fight it and fight it and fight it, but it will not shut off. I get it as best I can, but there's a water bill, but I don't have to pay it. They also told us they were low-income housing, but they're not associated with HUD. And HUD told me that they have to be associated with them in order to be a low-income housing. And I could go on and on and on, but we've had people stealing stuff out of the trucks. They're supposed to have cameras. My daughter has a bunch of tools in the bed of her truck. She has nowhere to put them because it's a work truck. But people have come and taken gas cans out of the truck. They've taken tools out. They took a ladder out and a dolly. But then we have to listen to the teenagers that don't have parenting at home at night. And they raise all kinds of cane. I went up to my daughter's house one night. I came back and there was 4 of them, 2 girls and 2 boys. And they were standing out there screaming and hollering. They're going to get into a knockdown, drag out fight. And I told them straight up, y'all better get your butts in the house right now. You boys better get off this property. Well, man, I don't want to hear it. It's 11 o'clock at night. I got babies asleep in my house. And y'all are screaming enough to wake the dead. I want it stopped and I want it stopped now. And they were using foul language worse than I do. And I'm very blunt when I talk. So I just told them they need to stop. They need to go in the house. And the next day I went and told their mother. I said, I won't stand for that. Those are your kids. And I know that. And I would not discipline them, but I will call the law on them. She said, I wish you should have done it. They're teenagers. They're going to be teenagers. But they're not going to stand out in our courtyard and try to hurt somebody. It happened 2 weeks ago, broad daylight. I know I'm overgoing my time, but I let them know right then and there. Ain't happening again. I stood at my front door and I called 911. I said, y'all need to take somebody to jail or something because this is ridiculous. The kids can't even play in the courtyard because they can't close their mouths. And I can't handle it because nothing has been done. Nothing. We have window units in our bedroom, in my bedroom and in my living room. I know it's against the law to do that, but we have to have some air. I have asthma. They have one in their bedroom upstairs because she has asthma. And my great grandbaby that's 7 years old has got asthma, bronchitis, and there's no air. Ours will work on on low, but it don't blow because the return vent in the living room was painted over before we moved in. I complained about it. It's never been changed. The guy said, I can't get it down. I said, that ain't my problem. That's your job, not mine. And when they mow the grass and stuff like that, I sweep my porch off every weekend, no matter what. But you can't do it because they blow that crap right at your feet, at your wall with their little air blower. Nobody should have to live like this. They should have better maintenance and better people to do what they're doing. But I'm not paying any more rent there. I can't live there. I just got to find me a place to go. But I think y'all need to know about all this stuff that they're not doing, like they say they're doing. Oh yeah, my daughters do cleaning. They have a cleaning service. They went to the office and talked to Elizabeth and then to Lisa when Lisa took over to help them clean the apartments out, do what needs to be done because they are a reputable company. They've been in business for 13 years. They wouldn't use them. They wouldn't let nobody do it. They didn't want anybody to get it cleaned up. Mine wasn't spotless when I moved in. I called them one day because my stove quit working. My oven door wouldn't stay on. And then the burners wouldn't work. So they brought me another stove and took the old one out. Well, this one, the burners still don't work. And I'm tired. I'm tired. I'm 67 years old. I don't need this. I don't want this anymore. But y'all need to be made aware of everything that's going on over there. And if you come over there and look around, you'll see it. I promise you, you will. And the floors are not level. They're supposed to have concrete under them. No. The prime example, my grandson can throw a little ball from our bedroom into the living room, but the ball turns around and goes back by itself because the floors are not level. My little dog will puddle and it rolls. And y'all know little puppies don't puddle that much, but it will roll down the hall. Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So we'll move on to discussion items. Item A, discussion related to appointment of the animal. Discussion related to appointment of, or for the Animal Control Advisory Board.
This is gonna be very quick. I just wanted to put it on your radar. We do need to make these appointments. There is a requirement within the ordinance that I had pulled up that disappeared on me, but it's got to be one city council, one city official, one citizen of Everman. There has to be a veterinarian appointed to the board and one representative, excuse me, from an animal welfare organization. So those are the 4 appointments that you'll be responsible for. We are waiting on the city of Forest Hill to still give their 2 nominations for you to consider to make those appointments, but that's likely not going to happen until May. And we have got to get some meetings going for Animal Control Advisory. So next meeting, we're going to be asking to entertain some nominations. Currently, we have Mayor Pro Tem Mackey and then Councilwoman Sellers serving on the board prior to the adoption of the new ordinance. But again, how those appointments are made are completely up to the council as a whole. So just wanted to put it on your radar. Don't have to entertain any nominations tonight, but we will ask for that next week. Yes, and then we're working on making a recommendation to council for the appointment of the veterinarian. and the animal welfare organization. So
Any further discussion? Next item, item B, presentation and discussion by the city attorney's office related to potential implementation of a stormwater impact and or utility fee.
Good evening, Mayor and Council. So based on the master drainage study presentation and the suggestion made of a utility fee being used to fund improvements, I have been asked to discuss the potential implementation of a stormwater utility fee. So stormwater utility fees or drainage charges are ongoing user fees that are charged to the utility bill for the owner of land for their use of the drainage infrastructure. The stormwater impact fees are upfront fees charged to developers for the burden of their new developments that come into the city and the use of city infrastructure. And those fees are only applied to future developments. Collection of drainage fees does not preclude the imposition of drainage-related impact fees to future developments. The utility fees and impact fees are not mutually exclusive, so the city can have both, but both would require a study prior to setting the amount of those fees. So cities may charge a fee to cover the cost of providing the infrastructure and facilities that permit the safe drainage of stormwater, prevention of surface water stagnation, and prevention of pollution arising from non-point runoff. Drainage utilities are obviously different than most other city utilities in that it's much more difficult to directly identify and bill individual customers for their use of the infrastructure. Nevertheless, the state law does recognize the importance of such utilities, and under the government code, you are able to implement a stormwater utility fee. Before a city may charge a drainage fee, it must comply with subchapter C of chapter 552 of the Texas Local Government Code, known as the Municipal Drainage Utility Systems Act, or the Act. The Act contains the procedures and formalities that I'll go over tonight to implement a stormwater utility fee. However, cities that do not attempt to charge a fee for drainage are not required to comply with the Act. Those cities may simply build drainage infrastructure using general fund money. The procedures for establishing a drainage utility, thus permitting a drainage fee, starts with the city first declaring drainage a public utility, and you would do that through an ordinance. So the city would have to adopt subchapter C of chapter 552 of the Texas Local Government Code by an ordinance that declares the adoption and that declares the drainage of the municipality to be a public utility. A city must do the following to establish a drainage utility. The city council must first find that the city intends to establish a schedule of drainage charges against all real property in the proposed service area, so in the city of Everman. The city will also find that they will provide drainage for all real property in the proposed service area on payment of the drainage charges, except for exempt properties. And the city will offer drainage service on a non-discriminatory, reasonable, and equitable terms. The first step for declaring drainage a public utility does require a public hearing on a drainage ordinance. That ordinance would have to be posted on the agenda, and the city must publish a notice of the hearing in the newspaper 3 times, the first time being on or before the 30th day before the hearing. So this will go into the timeline of how long it takes to implement a stormwater utility fee. The next step would be to have a public hearing on the schedule of charges. So once the city adopts an ordinance making drainage a public utility, there has to be a schedule of charges that is also listed in the agenda. And that has to be, again, published 3 times in the newspaper, and the first time being on or before the 30th day before that hearing. After the public hearing, the city may adopt the schedule of drainage charges, and the city may adopt any other rules that they find necessary to implement the stormwater utility fee. So the most important thing for you to consider tonight is how the drainage fee will be calculated. So the city council may establish a fee structure that charges individual lots or tracts of benefited property for drainage services on a basis other than the value of the property. So that would generally require working with the city engineer and performing a study that will list the specific charges for the utility. In regards to what the drainage fees may be spent on, they went over that a little bit during the drainage study, but it can only be spent to offset cost of providing drainage services. And that can only be spent if it's specifically mentioned in the ordinance that's passed. There are some properties that are exempt from drainage fees. That includes land that's owned by the state, a municipality, a school district, and a few others that if you decide to if you decide to adopt an ordinance to make drainage a public utility, we can go through and designate the exempt properties. So to summarize, the timeline from a legal perspective would be at least 3 months because it would require at least 2 public hearings and then the council meetings necessary to adopt the ordinance. And if there's going to be a study performed to set the fees, then also to speak with the city engineer regarding that. That concludes my presentation, and I can answer any questions.
Can we get your mic? I'm sorry.
So you're saying that if we pass this, most all citizens will pay a fee a month, and that money can only be used to offset cost for city drainage. And the only way you can use that money is by already having it on the plan.
Correct. So you'll specify in the ordinance that you're allowing the drainage fees to go towards the cost for the service. And then you can also fund any future drainage system construction by the city, but that all has
That's
to
new construction. That's not. I'm doing my street as an example.
Sure. Two
We have
different
no.
fees. So an impact fee impacts new development. What
Okay.
you're doing with that's why they call it an impact fee, is because the new development is having an impact on the system.
Right.
So we're collecting an impact fee. Hey, we want you to pay for
Only on
your
the new
impact that you're
construction.
causing on the system, only
Okay,
on
understand.
new construction. The utility fee,
Mhm.
essentially any customer on our utility water bill will get that same fee. And
Yeah,
yes,
but say my street, there's no drainage on one side. So if we don't put that in the plan to get that fixed, then you're collecting all this money and it's never going to be fixed. In other words, how do we know? We have to,
I think it
plan
really
way
boils
ahead
down
of
to
time.
the scope of what you're talking about. If you're talking about utility maintenance, in other words, there's already an existing drainage culvert and we need to clean that out. That's going to be included in the plan underneath simply drainage maintenance.
or
already existing.
new.
But if we're talking
culverts.
about new projects, we're gonna
No.
go in and widen, dredge, add a concrete culvert, any of that, then yes, it does need to be specifically identified in the plan that's done by the engineers. This is very similar to how we adopted the impact fee related to water and sewer. If you recall, we went through that process. The reason why I really wanted to do a presentation tonight and discuss this tonight is to get guidance on it, whether or not you want us to move forward, because there will be a cost to the city to move forward with this, either impact fee or utility fee or both. And we need to be prepared for that. Likely somewhere between $20,000 to $60,000 for the study. We paid $60,000 at the time to do the water sewer impact fee study. So there's going to be a cost for the professional services between legal services and engineering services to do either one or both. So it's more of a discussion on, do you want us to continue down this path? We can continue it. And just because we're continuing tonight doesn't mean your feet are held to the fire and you have to adopt it. But before I start continuing down that path of spending dollars on engineering and legal fees, I want to make sure that council is all on the same page and get a consensus that, hey, this is an avenue we feel we need to pursue.
But I want to make sure that the whole city in the areas that need the drainage gets taken care of.
Sure.
In other words, you're collecting this money and you're not going to do anything with it.
And I
So
think,
that's where I'm kind of
yeah, I think
wanting
we
to
would
know that the
rely,
study is really going to impact the city.
yeah, I think we would rely pretty heavily on the engineer's input on that, especially after the master drainage study comes out, what is the most critical areas? I think we could rely very heavily on that. You have as city council, you have a very big say on what's included in that plan. I mean, you provide the direction for what's in that plan. The plan is also, it can be updated
Absolutely.
as we
It can be-
proceed forward.
Okay.
So if we start with
It's
the
not in
plan and
stone.
we identify, hey, we've got a problem area that was not included in the plan, we have to go back through, I believe, a similar process that we had to go through to adopt it, to update it, correct? So we'll still have to have public hearings and do that, but it can be updated. And we plan on updating the water and sewer impact fee plan here in the next couple of years. So I'm guessing, but I would guess
Put a
between
high
$20,000
dollar.
to $60,000 in professional services cost.
I've got a question similar to that. I thought you said that the things had to be listed in the ordinance.
So that is correct. So if you're wanting to use the funds from the utility fee, it has to be listed in the ordinance. And that's
Okay.
whether it's to offset the cost of the current infrastructure or for future improvement.
Okay, so that's two different things. We got an ordinance on one hand and we got the engineer's plan on another.
Well, I think the engineer's plan is an exhibit to the ordinance, correct?
Well, it would just be up to the council how you want to include that information. But
Okay,
it does have to be listed that you're using the funds for both.
right. So what we don't want to have happen is to get ourselves pigeonholed over here because the ordinance says X and Z, but we got M, N, P, Q, and R over here that need addressing. They just weren't specifically mentioned in the ordinance. I just don't want us to get pigeonholed into something and.
So another thing to consider is the fee amount is typically calculated based off what the projects are. So if you only have a couple of projects, the fee amount that's calculated is typically going to be lower. If you have more projects, that fee amount is typically going to be higher.
So the fee could vary.
Well, the fee is set by you. The proposed fee that'll come back from the engineers will depend on those projects. You can choose to adopt the proposed fee or any fee amount, if I'm not mistaken.
Correct. It just can't be based on the value of the property. And it also,
Wait a minute, say that again. It is or is not based on the, it's,
it cannot be based on.
okay, that's
the
what I
value
thought
of
you
the
said.
property.
Okay. And it shouldn't be. I mean, it's just it's blood. Okay, or drainage. Okay.
And it also states that you don't want to impose a fee that's just arbitrary or solely for the reason of administrative convenience.
Right,
So that's why you want to have the study performed, because you want to have a basis for the fee.
right. And we just don't want to charge people money. So we have a big pot of money to spend.
Right.
But we don't have any plans to spend it. We just have it. Okay, yeah. What'd you say? I thought you said something. Okay. All right. I'm good.
Somebody's got mixed emotions.
So if we agree with this, right, and then we get the cost of whatever the survey is going to be or the 20,000, 60,000, we still decide then if we proceed or not. But at that time, we've already made the expense.
Yes, I mean, the study would have been paid at that. We're gonna pay for the professional services to conduct the studies.
When will
and
you do, I guess the search for I guess the engineer is going to do the survey, correct?
Depends. If it's over $50,000, then by finance guidelines, we would have to go out for either bid or RFQ, RFP, which at that point, we would obviously work with the legal team to determine the best way to do that. If it doesn't go over $50,000, then we're already contractually obligated with TMP, that is our city engineer, they could do the services for us.
And so we're going to start this up to begin the beginning of what we discussed at our last meetings, right? With this stormwater drainage and all the improvements that are coming up with that.
The master drainage study that was just completed is going to be pretty critical in this. It's
Okay.
not going to be all conclusive. So there will have to be more engineering studies done to determine the amount specifically to what projects, but it's certainly going to be a great starting point for us, and it will save us some money already having. We don't have to decide tonight either. If you want to kind of table this idea, I mean, we don't have to table the item because it's just a presentation, but if you want to kind of table the idea, what I do need and would like to know is because we are, not to put anybody into a panic, but we are about a month and a half away from budget, starting the budget process.
That's here it comes, right?
So I would like to know if this is something that council would like to move forward with. I would like to put it into the budget for this next fiscal year as we're getting ready to go.
I think we need it. We've got years and years of flooding in this old town, and we've gone to all this trouble to get the flood study. And if we stop there, shame.
Yeah,
I mean, we need to push on with this. We owe it to the citizens.
I agree.
Okay, so what my next steps will be essentially is I'll work with the city attorney's office and city engineer to try to get a cost proposal brought back together so we can do that. And bring that back to you. You can make a decision on whether you want to proceed with this urgently, as in before budget, or if you just want to include it in fiscal year 25's budget preparations.
Got
And we'll go from there. Just keep in mind, it does take about 3 months. And then, you know, I think the anticipated revenue based off what the engineers provided was, what we say, 180,000 a year on a utility fee on the state average. So it takes some time to build that money up. To be able to do any kind of project that's going to be worthwhile. So just bear in mind that, you know,
Right.
the longer we take, the longer we're proceeding this out. It'll probably take us 2 to 3 years to get a good fund amount in there to be able to go out and do a project that's really worthwhile. So,
Well, we
I'm
may
more
need,
concerned with what it's gonna cost the citizens.
sure.
Because, every time we turn around, we're gonna raise the water rates, our sewer rates, and all this, and we're just, we're
Small
kind
little
of
city.
Deeper and deeper.
keep adding stuff to our water bills.
That is the downside. I mean, it will be on the utility bill.
Right.
And there will be
Right.
people that are not happy about having to pay for a drainage utility. So that's why you're in the seat that you're in. You got people on both sides of the aisle screaming
Yeah.
at you.
I'm,
I want drainage, I want lower bills.
How many-
I'll leave that for you to decide. I'm just gonna give you the
I
facts.
know.
How many houses do we have in the city of Everman? Do you know offhand?
Roughly 2,200, I believe, off the top of my head. I think there's 2,200 rooftops. That doesn't include businesses.
Right,
I can get you hard numbers.
that would be helpful.
And we'll have that for you when we get a cost proposal and stuff like that.
I would
Okay.
assume, we're going to have to go after federal funding to correct a lot of our flood issues. And some of them may have